again, Kim Kelsey, with the book In Between My Tears. I read the first chapter, and someone told me it wasn't really loud. They could barely hear me. So this time I'm going to do it again. I'm going to speak louder, and I'm on chapter 2, which gets more about myself. The first chapter was me at um, Herman Kiefer's A Mental War for Children back in the 70s. It started off pretty heavy, me having to go to a seclusion room. So now we're going to read on, and I'm just going to read and then share a little bit. Chapter 2. Born January 27th, 1958, I became my parents' ninth child. I was their second daughter. They didn't have much money, and like most of the people in our neighborhood, they didn't have very good, good housing either. To add to their troubles, my mother was very sick while carrying me. Despite these adverse circumstances, my sister Rhoda caused that everybody was happy when I was born, especially her, since she had always wanted a little sister, being the only girl of 7 boys. Everyone's happiness was cut short, however, when it was discovered that my mother had tuberculosis. She and I were immediately separated after my birth. I stayed in the hospital for a few days and then was released, while my mother stayed behind. I can only imagine how my father must have felt leaving the hospital without his wife and taking me home without my mother. According to my sister, I was I was a beautiful baby girl. She held me for days, not wanting to let anyone take me from her. She was like a proud mother to me, but this was a unfitting role and eventually became an unbreakable task for an 8-year-old girl. My father did all that he could to support us, but he himself wasn't able to manage both working and caring for each of his 9 children on his own. Since I was literally the baby of the bunch, I was taken to live with my aunt, but her situation wasn't much different from my father's. At the time, my aunt was pregnant herself with, with her 7th child. Having an 8th baby to care for wouldn't be such an easy task, but she professed that she just loved me to death. It didn't appear this way to my sister. Every time she came to visit, I was left unattended and crying my lungs out. She didn't understand why my aunt instructed her not to keep picking me up. My aunt would scold her, saying, "Just leave her be. You can't pick her up just because she's crying." Before my aunt could get through her 7th pregnancy, I was sent to another family. This became routine. I was shuffled from one family member to another, aunts, uncles, and friends, whoever could care for me or said they could. That's who got me. After over a year being passed from household to household, I was reunited once again with my own family, which had grown from the time I've been gone. When I got home, I wasn't greeted by the arms of my mother. Her arms was already filled with my baby brother, and I didn't get the attention every infant needs and should have received from its birth mother. According to my sister, I didn't immediately complain or make a fuss trying to win or gain my mother's attention. If there's such a thing as an independent baby, I was it. I wouldn't let anyone come too close to me. I was constantly running away or screaming no. After being shuffled from place to place, I didn't know who these people really were. I wondered how long my stay would be with them. I couldn't trust anyone. I didn't know whom to trust without having made a connection with my mother at birth or any other member of my family. Though my whole infant eyes, through my whole infant eyes, I saw myself as an abandoned orphan, desperate to find a family to love and welcome me into their hearts and arms. From my sister's testimony, there was one word that would bring out the worst in me. This word could disappoint the average kid to tears, but I wasn't just the average kid. and I had heard this word on one occasion too many. That word was no. Hearing this word would bring on a temper tantrum that was more than just cries, kicks, or screaming. I would faint. I would hold my breath and literally black out. Having been from place to place, carrying around the unfulfilled hope that someone would take me into their arms and truly care for me, caused a void to resonate throughout my soul and send shocks of pain through my entire body. This pain would send me into a darkness that covered me and somehow gave me peace. This darkness was my safe haven from the world that didn't want me. To live in the darkness of my own mind was what I was comfortable with. I didn't know how else to be or where else I could go. I was in darkness from the start, lying awake in a crib at night, hoping and wishing that someone would come and rescue me. From an early age, I never felt accepted by my family or anyone else tried to care for me. This caused me to seek other ways to find attention. I established the defense mechanism of fainting. My family freaked out whenever I fainted. They would pick me up and yell at me, telling me to come back, or they would plead and cry to God for Him to send me back. This went on regularly, and though I could sense my family anguish anytime the word no was spoken, I took I took it as the go sign for me to faint and retreat into darkness. There was a definite panic my family endured, and always an urgency to bring me back when I fainted. But if I was still not getting my way, I would just black out again. Eventually, my parents put their feet down and insisted that my behavior was deliberate and selfish and had to stop. The next time I heard the word no and fainted, instead of begging and pleading for me to come back, my father got his belt and whipped me until I regained consciousness. My sister says that this was their way of beating the devil out of me. My father reacted to my fainting with his belt until I was about 5 years old, not because I had grown out of it, but because I had grown immune to it. Whenever I would get stressed about something or felt something was becoming too much for me to handle, I used my blackout escape. I could become grossly frustrated from anything as simple as not being able to do a chore correctly to something as complex as becoming suddenly and implicitly afraid of anything. I can remember fire trucks or police cars as a little girl, backing out from fear of the stir sounds. I soon felt my whole world being covered with darkness. This time I was unable to control it. I was just passing out without my knowledge or recollection. I didn't like being able to determine if I was causing my own blackouts or if there was occurring inevitably within me. I had an overwhelming feeling of loss, not knowing what was going on with me. My parents were beyond frustrated with my condition, and so were my brothers and sister. I could black out sometimes as many as 9 or 10 times a day. Eventually, they would just leave me lying there, not knowing what else to do or say. Maybe all the while my family had been earnestly praying for me because one day my blackouts just completely stopped. I remember this like it was yesterday. My sister and I were walking to school. It was freezing, and I could feel the cold going down my throat as I yelled all the way down the street at, at no one in particular. For whatever reason, I was crying, probably not wanting to go to school. My sister's bravery and forbearance of my tantrum became strong as, or even stronger than her patience and compassion with them. She took my hand and dragged me all the way down Ferry Park Avenue, ignoring my constant screams and cries. As we were walking across the alley, a fire truck with blaring sirens sped past. My insides began to feel as if a wild bear was attacking them or eating me alive. I stopped walking abruptly, took a deep breath, and fainted. This angered my sister so much that she walked on to the school without me. I don't know how long I lied there on the ground, but when I regained consciousness, there were strangers standing all around me. I was frightened, not sure where I was or why people were standing over me. I jumped up and dashed down the street towards home. Just as I got to the corner, there was my mother. The fright of waking up with no one familiar there to respond to my blackout scared the behavior right out of me. I never fainted again. I do remember um, those days of blacking out. I mean, as I think back on it, I do know that that was something that I did. I do definitely remember that day. Um, in between school, I think we probably had walked maybe 2 or 3 blocks, and me fainting and running home. And I never had that feeling again. After that, I was able to really have some self control. Why did that happen? No one really knows. Maybe it was attention. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was because I kept going from home to home because my father couldn't really take care of me while my mother was in the hospital. We never really knew. I just know that that last experience is really what stopped the behavior. Any other questions about it or any other thoughts about it, I'll be glad to hear it. You can reach me at In Between My Tears on Facebook. Um, if you're interested in wanting to get your hands on this book and read it yourself or share it with some friends, please let me know. And thanks for listening. See you next time.